Chapter 12. Trevor's POV. Oh. I sighed loudly and obnoxiously as I placed my head on my desk. As one of this pack's 2 alphas, I had a choice to make. Now that Kyle was in a coma, I began to think about lowering his beta rank, not because he was injured, but because everything that has led up to where we were now. He has 3 mates, gets his heat regularly now, and is fertile, meaning he could get pregnant any moment now. I don't want to put more stress on his body, and with his current state, he won't be able to work for a while. He's not going to take getting his title removed well, 𝐊𝐢𝐬 said before I groaned. We knew him better than anyone else. He was going to be overdramatic when he hears the news, but we thought about the best interest of the pack and for him. Being a beta is just too dangerous and stressful. He'd still be a higher up, just not a beta. We won't replace him since we have another beta anyways. We'll just let him rest and take it easy, I told him, and he rolled his eyes. We're not in any wars at the moment. Hopefully Cornelius doesn't break off the treaty due to the misunderstanding, 𝐊𝐢𝐬 said, while we both just looked up at the high glass ceiling. After that, it was just silent. How was I going to tell him that he wasn't going to be our beta anymore? Am I supposed to tell him the day he finally wakes up from his coma? That would be pretty fucked up. Maybe instead of lowering his rank, we can just let him take a break. Like have maternity leave. I mean, look at our beautiful mate. He still worked hard when he was pregnant with our pups, I said while smiling. It's true that I didn't want Kyle to get hurt, but maybe I was looking at it wrong earlier. He's still Kyle whether he's in heat or not. Yeah, plus re-ranking a beta wolf would take too long, 𝐊𝐢𝐬 joked as we began to laugh together. We were both sure that Kyle was going to wake up in no time. Chapter 13. Liam's POV. I smiled triumphantly while my assigned nurse took off my neck brace. My shoulder was no longer dislocated and my neck was finally healed after a few days of resting. I haven't heard any news from Seth about his arm or ribs getting any better, and last time I checked, James still had a broken leg, meaning that I won the bet. I can go see my mate now, right? I asked my nurse excitedly while some pack doctors marked things off of their wooden clipboards. Liam, just because you're cleared to leave doesn't mean you're cleared to go see our pack's beta, a chubby doctor huffed while glaring at me. Okay, Sue, why the fuck not? I asked a different doctor, causing her to smile sadly at me. Liam, beta Kyle still hasn't waken up from his coma yet. His body isn't healing as fast as it was in the beginning, and there's a problem, she said, while resting her hands on my shoulders and slowly forcing me to sit down. My mind then began racing and my wolf started to get restless. What problem did they get? Is her going to stay in a coma forever? Why isn't he healing normally? What's the problem? I asked seriously, my concern lingering in my voice as I tried to stand up, only to be forced to sit back down. Look, Liam, the only way for him to get better is rest, the chubby man said before they all grew quiet. Why won't they tell me what the hell is wrong with my mate? Tell me what's wrong with him right now or I'll kill you, I said, shoving the nurse away from me and standing up. My wolf began surfacing and I knew it wouldn't be much longer before he took over completely. I want to go see mate, my wolf whimpered while the doctors and nurses clung to each other. Oh, okay. The problem is that Cornelius is the only one who could heal Kyle's physical wounds completely. We can heal wounds by our own species easily, but since Cornelius is a different species, it's harder on Kyle's body. You should just be happy that Kyle's a beta. If anyone else other than him got attacked, with the exception of our alphas, they would have died. The fact that your injured healed so quick just proves that Cornelius went easier on you than on Kyle, the chubby doctor said, and my heart stung. Was he trying to tell me that Cornelius not only didn't fight me seriously, but he was the key to my baby waking up happily and healthy? What room is he in? I asked them bitterly, and they just stayed clinging to each other. If you're not going to help me, then fucking move and figure out a way to heal him, I snapped at them before I pushed past them and walked into the hallway. I informed my brothers of the situation because they deserved to know while I sniffed the air and searched for that bastard lion's room. He was going to fix this situation and take responsibility for the shit that he did. 30 minutes went by and I still couldn't pinpoint his fucking scent. I was going to start kicking down doors, but then I spotted a group of felines chatting amongst each other in some foreign language. It was that fucker's harem. I grabbed one as gently as I could while angry, and she yelped before blushing at me. I didn't know any of their names, but even if I did, I couldn't tell you which girl I just grabbed. They all fucking looked the same, so that asshole obviously has a fetish. Cornelius, I told her, and her friends, and they just started talking to each other again in a language I didn't get. Even the girl who I held in a tight grip began to join their conversation like I wasn't even near her. I couldn't figure out what they were debating over, but after a few minutes, the girl yanked my hands off of her and entwined our fingers. "Why are you holding my hand?" I asked her as I made a disgusted face. Why did we all have to speak different languages? Language barriers in emergency situations were so hard to overcome. "Corny," she said happily before she led me down a hallway, her fellow Pride members following behind us with disappointed faces. So I guess they were talking about if they should take me to him or not, which I fully understand. I wouldn't want some angry stranger asking me to take them to my mate's medical room either. As we walked down the hallway, I tried to free my hand from her grasp, but she wouldn't let me. I guess it didn't matter right now, as long as I could get to Cornelius and force him to help Kyle. "Caleb," the girl screeched before pulling me harsher to the room where Caleb stood outside, looking down and fiddling with his hoodie string. "It's Caleb," he sighed out lowly before looking up and towards us as we walked up to him. "Liam ... what are you doing here?" "Cornelius isn't going to be too happy to see us both here together," Caleb said lowly before the girls laughed behind us. They pushed us into the room, probably not understanding that we didn't want to go in, and as soon as we entered I saw Cornelius perfectly healed, shirtless and smugging at me on his bed. "You're going to go heal Kyle right now, or else I'll end your life," I told him while glaring at him, and all he did was laugh in repose. "You're in no position to order me around, mutt." I called for Caleb. "Not you," he said before the girls took seats near him. Something about him pissed me off. I couldn't tell if it was his huge ego or the feeling of entitlement he felt he had. "Caleb's not going anywhere near you if you don't heal Kyle," I said, grabbing Caleb by his waist and moving his body closer to mine, causing him to tremble lightly and blush submissively. I know he hated this kind of thing, but I'm sure I'd make it up to him later. And he agreed with me. If Cornelius didn't heal Kyle, Caleb was surely going to never give them a chance at Begins mates, ever. Chapter 14. Liam's POV. "You have a lot of balls, mutt," Cornelius said bitterly to me while I kept my hands on his mate's waist. Cornelius's eyes began glowing and he stood up from the bed he was previously sitting on. In his human form, he was just as terrifying as his beast form. He had orangey-brown eyes, just like the girls in his Pride and his Lion, a perfect tan, chiseled jawline, short, dirty blonde hair, and he was at least 6'A". "Just because you're a pretty boy doesn't mean that I'll lose to you," I told him while placing Caleb behind me. He looked like he wanted to kill me, but that wasn't going to make me back down. No matter what, I was going to make this bastard help my mate. "I'm not going to just do what you ask me to. Where do you get off thinking you can bark your demands at me?" he asked me as he inched closer to me slowly. If you hurt Liam, I'll never forgive you," Caleb shouted from behind me loudly, surprising everyone in the room, including himself. He looked embarrassed, but I was happy that he stuck up from me. His words clearly affected Cornelius whether he liked it or not, causing him to get frustrated. "I never thought I'd see the day where I'd listen to a runt," he said while walking past me and bumping my shoulder roughly. "Well, where is he?" "You wanted me to heal him, right?" he asked Caleb as he stopped in front of him. Even with his back towards me and his pride, I could tell that he was probably embarrassed that Caleb could calm him down so quickly and control him without even knowing much about him. "I heard some nurses in the hallway say he was in room 492, Caleb mumbled, looking down and avoiding his mate's lustful gaze. "Then let's go," I said, causing everyone, including the girls, to leave the room. We all followed Caleb to the room quietly, and I kept my eyes locked on Cornelius in case he tried any funny business. "Are you sure you guys want to see this?" Cornelius asked, causing Caleb and I to glare at him. All he did was shrug before roughly slamming open the door to Kyle's medical room. Machines were beeping and his shallow breathing filled the room as we all entered. The staff was right, his injuries looked like they only healed a little bit after all this time. His eyes were closed and his body just laid there still and quiet. My stomach started to twist and anger found itself coursing through my veins again. He was the reason this happened, yet he was the only one that could help Kyle get better. "𝐻𝐢𝐧𝐬 sure caused a lot of damage," Cornelius said to himself, referring to the damage his lion inflicted on my mate's precious body. "This is so stupid. I can't believe I have to do something so disgusting," Cornelius groaned as he began to strip his pants away. Terror and confusion washed over me, and before I knew it, my body acted on its own. I punched him. I punched him so hard that he fell on his ass beside Kyle's medical bed. You motherfucker. That hurt. What the fuck do you think you're doing? You were the ones that threatened me to fucking heal him, Cornelius spat, while holding his right cheek and picking himself up off of the cold tiled floor. I don't know about lions, but wolves don't need to get completely naked to heal someone, I yelled at him, startling his pride in Caleb. The room was small and quiet, so loud shouting probably startled them. Huh. Lions need to shift and lick the wounds we caused for them to heal, dumbass. If you didn't know how I was going to heal him, why didn't you ask before bringing me here, you stupid bitch, he explained while shouting at me. I didn't like the idea of another man having to look at my mate. So what made him think I'd be okay with letting him see Kyle completely naked? He's need to lick his wounds? No way in hell was that going to happen. Liam, I know you won't like it, but he won't get any better without him doing this. Trust me, he looks like he'll change his mind any second now, so if we need to do this for Kyle, we need to do it now. Caleb mind-linked me using our pack link, and I groaned loudly before kicking the wall behind me. Just hurry up and do it. Everyone else has to get out, though. I don't think I'll be able to control my jealousy if everyone watches. I said to them, and I could feel my heart begin to ache. This was all so that Kyle could get better. I didn't have time to be jealous right now. Cornelius told the girls to exit the room in that language that they spoke, and they left eagerly, with Caleb getting dragged along by them. I let out a deep breath that I didn't know I was holding before walking over to the door and locking it. I'm sorry that I punched you earlier. I'll control myself better, so please continue, I forced myself to say to Cornelius a few minutes later. I think it's best if you leave the room too. I don't have any interest in your mate, so don't worry about me trying to fuck him, he shrugged before I glared at him. Honestly, just go wait in the hallway. If I don't do this, Caleb will never give me a chance, and I'm not going to do this if your wolf attacks me in here, he said, while stripping. I nodded, swallowing my pride and walking over to Kyle. The quicker I leave, the quicker this nightmare will be over. Hurry back to me, baby, I told Kyle before leaning down and kissing his soft, plump lips. His lips were cold, causing tears to silently flow down my cheeks. I bit the inside of my cheek and kissed him one last time before I left the now shifted lion alone with my mate. His lion was in control, so now it was all up to the beast whether or not he was going to help Kyle or not. For all I know, he could kill him right now, but I had hoped that he wouldn't. He wanted Caleb's affection just as badly as Cornelius did, so he'd surely help him. I updated my brothers on the situation again and waited restlessly outside Kyle's medical room for the okay to come back inside. I wanted my baby in my arms again. Chapter 15. Kyle's POV. I groaned lowly as I woke up. My eyes were still shut, but I was fully awake now. My throat was sore, my body felt super heavy and cold, and not to mention I had a huge headache. The room I was in was freezing, and I heard machines beeping, meaning that I was in some sort of medical room in the main house. I was probably laying down on one of the medical beds, judging by the texture of the thin sheet I felt beneath me, and I couldn't help but notice how quiet it was. Suddenly, I felt the sensation of wet, rough sandpaper on my neck, and it hurt a lot. It felt like it was peeling my skin away. I groaned louder this time, causing the sandpaper to stop rubbing against my neck, but then a few minutes later it continued. I kept trying to open my eyes, but it was like I didn't have the energy to. My mind was all wonky, and I couldn't even turn on my mind link with how distorted I felt. I laid there, having no strength to open my eyes or to push the rough sandpaper away from my body, and tried to recall what happened. Long story short, we were attacked by a lion, and our mate saved us by coming to our rescue like sexy princes in shiny armor. They were injured pretty badly, along with the lion, and now we're laying somewhere being assaulted by said lion as he licks our wounds. My wolf 𝐊𝐢𝐬 informed me as I mentally began to panic. So you mean to tell me the wet sandpaper is actually a lion's papillae? UWW. Now that you mention it, it does smell like feline and musk, I told him, and he began to pace around in my mind impatiently. I want to go see our mates, 𝐊𝐿𝐿 moaned loudly, worsening my headache. I missed them. I felt incomplete when I wasn't near them. My heart ached and craved to be by them and in their embrace. I mean, I do too, but I can't even open my eyes up right now, I replied sadly before I attempted to open my eyes again. It was no use though, my eyelids were heavy and just wouldn't budge. I couldn't even speak, just groan or hum. A few moments later, Cornelius's lion began to lick down my chest. I couldn't protest or tell him to stop, but I could tell that for some reason his saliva was helping my body feel lighter. It still felt disgusting to know that he was licking my naked body. I don't remember taking off my fucking clothes, but they were probably ripped apart and bloody. Oof, they were probably thrown away and those pants made my ass look really juicy, I mentally mumbled while the rough licking continued. The tiny backward spines on his tongue continued to trace over the wounds he left on my body carefully, but the texture of his tongue was so rough that it hurt. Him biting our neck hurt more than him licking us, and as soon as he's done maybe we'll be able to open our eyes and move around, my wolf said enthusiastically, and I hoped he was right. After licking at my chest, he moved his tongue back up. I wanted to cry because he was about to lick the worst injury on my body yet, my shoulder. I never looked at it, but even now I'm sure it looked hideous. The pack doctors probably tried their best to stitch it up, or whatever, but it still felt as if my flesh was exposed. I couldn't open my eyes, but tears were sliding down my face as he began to lick my shoulder. I screamed, thankful that he healed me enough that I could now let my voice out, but the pain continued to course through my body as my heart began to speed up. I could now move my body a little bit, so I tried to push the lion off of me, but of course the beast didn't budge against my weak attack. I continued to cry and holler until the pain slowly began to fade away within an hour. It felt like I was being burned alive and I couldn't stop it, but it was finally beginning to be tolerable. Cornelius hates me, so why is he healing me? I asked my wolf while failing to open my eyes. We'd have to ask him that ourselves, but I'm pretty sure that Runt had something to do about it, he replied as a small smile made its way onto my lips. Caleb was definitely brave for shifting into his tiny wolf and trying to save me. Looking back at the situation, he looked really adorable trying to fight the 8-foot lion I was up against, even though he was the size of one of the pack's pups. I have to make sure I thank him when I wake up, I mentally noted as the beast finally took his weight off of me. I sat up slowly, my movement cautious, because I knew that Cornelius wasn't the one in control right now. I didn't want to challenge his beast, especially after what happened last time, so I put my hands up in surrender before I felt my shoulder. It was as good as new like the rest of my body, but I could feel the tiny trace of a scar. Of course, a wolf couldn't fully be healed if one was attacked by a different species, but I was glad that everything seemed to be okay now. Well, everything, except for my eyes opening apparently. Oh God, please don't tell me I'm blind. I won't be able to live with myself if I can never see my reflection again, I panicked loudly before I heard the beast take huge steps over to where the side of my bed was. I felt the medical bed shift, indicating that his lion was standing on his back legs and his front paws were on my bed besides me. I was about to say something to him, but I was caught off guard by his beast licking my face and my eyes. Oh wow, thank you, I groaned out sarcastically as I felt my face grow sticky and the saliva began to dry quickly. I wiped my eyes and before I knew it I began blinking. I looked over and the lion that was licking my pain away was replaced with an angry and disgusted Cornelius. Don't think this will ever happen again. You should be thankful to Caleb because without him I would have never healed you. Geez, you tasted like fucking caramel and honey, he spat out bitterly, but I knew deep down he felt sorry for attacking me. I don't know why I felt that he was remorseful. I just did. I didn't want to believe it, but I guess it wasn't so bad to have hope that he felt bad about injuring me this badly. Thank you for healing me. I'm sorry about what happened. How long was I in a coma? I asked him while he began to put his clothes on a few feet away from my medical bed. Only about 2 weeks or something, I don't fucking know. Just start keeping your hands to yourself. I could have killed you, he mumbled, and I smiled. He was blushing and clearly looked embarrassed at how possessive he acted. Kyle Liam shouted, startling me as he busted through the door to the room I was being held in, followed by some doctors and Caleb along with the female Pride members. Liam, I cried out, but before I could even get out of bed, he ran over and embraced me in a tight hug. I breathed in his scent and was instantly calm. I missed hearing his voice and just being next to him. It felt like it's been years since I've last seen him, but in reality it's been less than a few days. "Oh, thank the goddesses that you're okay. I've missed you so much, baby," he whispered in my ear as he tightened his hold on me. I had so many questions to ask him, but soon the doctors kicked everyone out of the room to check on my health, which was bullshit, because I wanted to be by Liam. I wanted to go see Seth and James too. I wanted to go see my mates. "If you have a problem with it, take it up with our alphas. Now we're going to start examining you to make sure you're stable enough to see your mates. If they get too excited, they might reopen an internal injury or something," a doctor commented while I huffed. As the pack's beta, I understood that I couldn't go against my alpha's orders, but as a mated wolf, I wanted to go see my mates so bad. Liam was perfectly fine, meaning his injured were healed, but what about James and Seth? Was Caleb okay? I hope no one was beating themselves up over this, because if anyone was to blame, it was me. Oof, what if I fucked up the treaty with Cornelius? What if the second beta is going to take my place because I haven't been working? What if while I was in a coma, everyone else around me began to age rapidly? "Beta Kyle, please calm down. We can't take your blood pressure like this," a nurse said before I sighed. But I had so many unanswered questions and needs that needed to be fulfilled. Chapter 16. James's POV. It upset me a little that Liam won the bet out of all of us. I prayed to both the moon goddess and the sun goddess to help me heal quickly, so that I would be the one to see our beautiful mate first. But even though I prayed the hardest I could, they chose him to be the one that won our petty little bet. He updated both me and Seth on Kyle's recovery every chance he got, which I was thankful for, but I wanted to see him with my own two eyes desperately. Our alphas were the ones that won't allow him to see us until the doctors clear him. They're still running their tests now, Liam said, sadly, through our brotherly mind link. We had so many mind links, it was hard to be alone. Sometimes I alone had one private one with just me and Kyle, one private one with both my brothers, one public one with the entire pack, and even with one small private one with both the alphas. I could sense his excitement the moment Kyle opened his eyes, but his excitement was now gone again, as well as his usual goofiness. Now he was depressed again. "At least he got to see our mate, my wolf," Ramus said sternly, clearly jealous of Liam, and I agreed with him. At least he could move around freely now, without having to worry about the hospital staff yelling at him for trying to see our only reason for living. "You're so ungrateful," I said to myself aloud so Liam wouldn't hear me. I knew it wasn't my brother's fault that I was still healing. I was just upset with myself still for not being able to protect Kyle. "I can feel your sadness, brother. Just breathe. I have an examination right now, but I'll check on you later," Seth said quietly before he shut me out of his head. No matter how many times I tried to tell myself it wasn't my fault, I somehow always ended up back at square one. The truth of the matter is that I wasn't strong enough to take care of the mate I've loved for several years now. "It wasn't your fault," Kyle told me in our private mind link, where only me and him could talk, our own little place. Hearing his voice instantly relaxed my body. I haven't heard him speak in weeks. Even if it wasn't face to face, it was something. It let me know that this nightmare was almost over, but deep down it reminded me of the guilt and the pictures of him laying down dying coursed through my mind. "James... stop. I'm awake now, I'm better. You know I'd never blame any of you for what happened. I know you did the best you could. Thanks to you, I'm here breathing now. You showed up at the right time and saved me. I'm so glad to have met you that time in the woods years ago. And I love you so much," he said in between sobs. It pained me to hear him break down in tears. I bit down on my bottom lip and felt blood trickle down the side of my mouth. The irony taste landed on my tongue and I shook my head in disgust. "James, talk to me please, I miss your voice." "I want to hear you," Kyle said, still sobbing, and I could feel how much he craved to be near me. The feeling was mutual, of course. I wanted nothing more than to be near him. "Please baby," Kyle whined softly, causing me to calm down and smile. He was so spoiled, but he made it impossible to deny him of anything he wanted. "You make it so hard to say no... I just miss you so much, it's driving me crazy," I sighed out as I felt Kyle's mood pick up. "I miss you too. 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐬 won't stop crying about your dick," Kyle mumbled, frustrated. It made Ramus feel prideful that our mate craved our touch, but it made me blush out of embarrassment. He was always shameless when it came to talking about sex, and I'd always scold him about it. "Kyle," I warned, and without even seeing him I could tell that he rolled his eyes in annoyance. I know, you don't like when I say vulgar words, but I can't help it. Dick and other words like fuck have been in my vocabulary for ages. Plus, I couldn't help that going weeks without sex has made me crazy horny. He complained, and a small smile found its way onto my lips. I missed this. I missed him healthy and full of energy, and as much as I'd rather him say he missed my smile, I decided to just be happy he missed some part of my body in the first place. And don't even get me started about how my doctor almost caught me wanking off last night when I thought of you guys all over me. Like it's weird getting aroused in a hospital, but my boner wouldn't go away, he said in so much shock, and I almost began wheezing. I'd have to kill him if he saw that beautiful sight I told him, causing him to huff. Oh, trust me, it wasn't that beautiful. I couldn't get my fingers in deep enough, and I had to change positions so many times to even get some relief. He groaned, and I couldn't help but imagine how sexy he must have looked struggling on all fours on that small hospital bed. His body was well built, so when he bends over, man, it was such a good sight to see. Okay, baby, I get it. You're making me turned on, and given the situation I'm in, that's not a good thing right now, I told him, and he understood completely. I'll come see you as soon as I can, he breathed out, sleepily. Okay, get some rest, I told him. Then moments later, I was left in the silence of my medial room again. Chapter 17. Kyle's POV. It was nightfall, and I just couldn't fall asleep. I was restless, and not to mention super horny. All the doctors and staff should be gone by this time, but there was always a few lingering around that just never went home. Like, how can someone take their jobs so seriously? I got off of my hospital bed and opened the door to my room slowly and quietly. So we're going against not only the doctor's orders, but our own 2-alpha's orders, my wolf 𝐊𝐢𝐬 asked curiously, causing a mischievous smile to creep its way onto my face. It's not going against their orders, remember. If you never get caught, no harm was ever done, I told him, instantly making him just as excited as I was. I wanted to see my mates so bad it was basically killing me. I wanted to smell their scents, feel their body warmth, hear their voices. I wanted to just be near them. And fuck them. Don't forget about fucking them, my wolf added as I left my medical room quietly. I looked around the hallway to make sure I was alone, but I spotted Liam asleep right by the door. I squatted down beside him and smiled. He was fast asleep while sitting down with his back against the wall. We've been mind-linking ever since the doctors kicked him out of my medical room, but there was nothing like talking to the person you loved in person. Liam, baby, I said quietly, not wanting any of the medical staff to hear me if any were around. They'd definitely not smell me since there was so many scents around, but since the hallways were so quiet, I wouldn't be surprised if they heard me even whisper. Liam, come on before someone comes, I whispered in his right ear, then he groaned and started to wake up. Kyle, he yelled, but I quickly covered his mouth and yanked him inside my medical room. Once we were inside, I locked the door, then waited for a few minutes to see if anyone was going to come investigate Liam's yelling. I kept my ears pressed against the door and listened, but no one came. I'm sorry, but we'd get in trouble if someone heard you, I said, breaking the silence as I turned away from the door and looked at him. He was smiling, and even though the lights were off in my room, thanks to the moonlight and the window that was in here, I could see him perfectly. I walked over to him before he could even speak, and I wrapped my arms around him and laid my head against his chest, taking in his scent that I'd been itching to smell. How is it possible to make strawberries and bananas smell so good, he asked me lowly, still cautious of being heard by someone as he wrapped his hands around my waist. I don't know, how do you make something like charred oak smell sexy, I asked back quietly, and his eyes began to glow. I could tell me being hurt was taking a toll on everyone, and it hurt me to know that I was the reason why. Don't even think about anything but us right now. Forget about everything and just clear your mind, Liam said before he laughed lightly. He unwrapped his arms from my waist, and with a huge grin, he walked over to my bed and pulled me gently behind him. He sat on the bed and pulled me into his lap while we faced the huge glass window beside us. The moon was high and bright in the sky, illuminating the room we were in and just lighting up the night without a care in the world. It was peaceful now, and I didn't feel as restless as I did before now that one of my mates was with me. I still planned on seeing Seth and James, but for now I was going to relax with Liam. The moon's a waxing gibbous right now, he commented, breaking the silence as his dark green eyes stared up at the moon with excitement. So you're ready for the next full moon, I asked him shyly while he began to rub my back smoothly and carefully, as if I were glass that he didn't want to break. Other than my heat. A full moon was a time that we couldn't control our inner wolves and began mating ruthlessly. It was disgusting to see how crazy it affected some of us, and afterwards it was gross to clean up, but it was worth it, and it was something that's happened for centuries, so we were pretty used to it by now. But no, this time was different. Now that we've mated, they probably expect us to be mating during the full moon just like we were during my last heat. If my last heat didn't get me pregnant, this full moon would definitely do the job. What did I say about worrying about other things? Liam asked as he tilted my chin up a little bit so that we could see each other's faces. He locked eyes with me before he leaned in closer to me, with a small pout displayed onto his beautiful face. "I'm sorry," I said, smiling before I leaned into him and placed a gentle kiss on his plump lips. He smirked into the kiss and licked my lips, asking to deepen it, and I gladly granted him permission. His tongue slid into my mouth swiftly, and I childishly battled him for dominance. I lost after a few minutes of trying, and I just gave up and let him control our kiss. It was long and loving. Every second that he missed me, he poured into our kiss. I blushed as he held my face in place carefully as his tongue twisted against mine. "I've really missed your kisses," he told me before he sucked lightly on my bottom lip before biting it. My toes curled and I let out a small whimper before he took my breath away and kissed me rougher. "Okay, I know you're both having some fun right now, but baby, can you please not think about my brother's dick so openly? I can practically smell your arousal from here, you know," James asked, flustered, causing me to lean away from my kiss with Liam. "Ooh, he's such a cock block," Liam groaned out as he got up from the bed. I took that as my sign to go see James and Seth now, so I got up and followed him towards the door. "I'll stay outside your room, and if someone tries to go in, I'll say you're sleeping or something," Liam said as we stepped outside my room and closed the door after making sure the coast was clear. "Thank you. I know you wanted us to have some more alone time, but I promise you as soon as this nightmare is over, we will have our own little dates," I whispered to him before giving him one last kiss. "Okay, honey bun, just hurry up before the staff gets here," he told me, and then I carefully crept around the hallways looking for Seth and James. Chapter 18. Kyle's POV. I snuck around a few hallways, reading off names displayed outside of medical rooms, until I finally stumbled upon Seth's room. I opened the door quietly, not waiting to draw any unwanted attention, and as soon as I closed the door, I rushed over to the side of his bed. He was sleeping quietly with his lips a little parted. His chest rose up and down with each breath he took. He had window room too, which I was thankful for, because it showed me how beautiful he looked despite his injuries without me needed to turn on a light. I wanted to wake him up and talk to him, but a small part of me wanted him to rest. He's been having trouble sleeping like his brothers, and he deserved some good rest. He's been having me worry the most, though. I've been mind-linking him, but unlike his brothers, he's not as good when it comes to speaking about his emotions or problems. He tends to keep them bottled up, and he's been blaming himself the hardest, in my opinion. He was sensitive and shy despite how serious he is. Sometimes he'd even act fine to make sure others didn't worry about him, even though he was obviously hurting on the inside. Slowly he started opening up to me, but he still had a wall he needed to take down. "I didn't want you to see me like this. I'm a pack hunter and I could barely fight off a lion to save my mate's life," Seth said lowly, so I sat down on the hospital bed, placing myself next to him. "You know I don't blame any of you for what happened, baby. Don't be so hard on yourself, because you all got there. I'm here right now. I'm healthy and healed now," I told him quietly, but he kept his eyes closed. He didn't want me here. Well, technically he didn't want to look at me because he'd feel guilt again. "Open your eyes, Seth. The last time you saw me I was hurt badly. I'm fine now. Look," I told him, and he didn't listen to me. He usually always listened to me, but I guess this affected him deeper than I thought. "Damage can't be fixed in a day. I just can't live with myself knowing that I wasn't strong enough for you. I'm not as humorous as Liam, as smart as James, or even as strong as our alphas, but I wanted to save you more than anything," he whispered to me, and my eyes started to water. "You don't have to be like them. Just be the best you can be. I love you how you are," I told him before I started crying. It probably made me look weak since I was so built and tall, but I didn't care. I was a huge drama queen and an amazing cry baby. He opened his eyes a few minutes into me, bawling my eyes out, and he sat up on his bed. His arm was still in a cast, and he had bandages wrapped around his torso, trying to cover where his ribs were still not fully healed. With his good arm, He pulled me into a calming embrace, and I cried into his shoulder. I loved him how he was, and it always pained me to see them hurt, both physically or mentally. I wanted us all to live happily without any pain in our lives, but of course fate had other plans for us. "I love you," he told me lowly while I kept my head resting on him, inhaling his delicious scent of lavender mixed with a hint of cedar. "I love you more," I told him before I pulled away from his body. I had to remember that Seth was more reserved than his brothers. Because their personalities are so big, it's hard sometimes not to get overwhelmed by them. But even though Seth was shy and reserved, I still loved him just as much as I loved his brothers. Being shy and mostly quiet had a lot of attractive perks that he doesn't even realize he has. Being introverted is just as sexy as being extroverted. Not only was Seth super attractive, he was smart too. I loved how his brain worked. He could read a book about the most boring shit ever, but he'd read it with such a huge smile on his face that I wouldn't even mind watching him read. He didn't need to be the life of the party to gain my attention and affection. He just needed to be himself. I loved how different each of them were, but their differences seemed to be something that worried them individually. "I love everything about you, from your hair," I said before kissing the top of his head gently. "To your cute little nose," I continued as I moved on and kissed his nose lightly. "To your slight dimples that you hate showing off," I said, as he stared at me in embarrassment before I kissed his cheek. "To your soft, plump lips," I said before placing a gentle peck on his lips. "From head to toe, you're my perfect mate. I'd do anything to make you happy," I told him as I cupped his face in my hands and stared into his dark green eyes. "You always know how to cheer me up," he said before he leaned forward and captured my lips in a passionate kiss. His kisses didn't match his personality at all. He dominated the kiss immediately and took control before I even had a chance to breath. I loved how much emotion and passion he put into his kisses, but right now I was too horny to even think. "Seth, we can't fuck here," I moaned into the kiss, but he didn't listen to me. We made out for a few minutes, and I don't remember how, but sometime during those few minutes, I ended up straddling him and rocking my body against him gently. "If only you weren't injured, I would have let you take me right here," and now I whispered in his ear before getting off of him and standing beside his bed. "As soon as you're fully healed, you better fuck me like there's no tomorrow," I told him seriously before kissing his forehead and leaving his room. "Next is finding James," I told myself aloud as I began to walk through the hallways restlessly. Chapter 19. Kyle's POV. I don't remember these halls being this long, I mumbled to myself as I continued sneaking around, looking for James. I looked at several nameplates before finally finding his. I didn't understand why they'd separate their rooms so far, but then I remembered why. Oh, because they'd probably cause trouble, try to team up and fight Cornelius despite their injuries, or maybe the fact they'd cause chaos trying to get into your room every chance they got, my wolf commented, making me smile and nod my head. I looked around the empty, quiet, and cold hallway before opening the door to his room quickly and slipping myself inside. "Well, look who it is," James said with a toothy smile as I walked towards him slowly, taking in his scent and appearance. "Hey, cutie, how are you feeling?" I asked him despite already knowing the answer, and all he did was chuckle in response before smiling. "I'm glad he didn't knock one of your beautiful teeth out. I'd cry if I couldn't see your smile," I said truthfully before I laid down on the bed, besides him with a small smile on my face. "I'm just glad to see yours again," he told me while I rested my head on his shoulder. "I've missed you, all of you. I just wish this never happened, but it can't be helped," I told him lowly, as I stared at his elevated leg. Out of all of them, his injuries seemed to be the ones that were taking the longest to heal. "Don't worry, it's getting better slowly but surely," James said before he placed his arm behind me. I snuggled closer into his side before sniffing him. Geez, his scent made butterflies erupt throughout my stomach. Ponderosa sap was just such a good scent, especially on him. His body heat was warming me up, and it just felt nice to be near him. My wolf was going crazy, and of course my heart started beating fast as soon as he placed a kiss on my head. I was the pack beta, but when I was with them, they made me feel so small and loved, despite how tall and strong I was. I was starting to like the feeling of being desired so much. "I'm so proud of all of you, especially you. You guys might feel defeated and sad, but it made me happy to know that you guys loved me enough to fight off a lion to protect me, I told him as I fought my tears to not flow down my beautiful face. I love you, James, my big, tough, smart mate. You're beautiful, and even though you broke your leg, you're still pretty cool, I told him honestly as I watched his chest go up and down with every breath he takes. I love you too, Kyle. Everything about you, even if you sometimes sneak into the kitchen late at night and eat Liam's secret stash of food when you think no one's looking, he said, making me blush. Hey, I said, embarrassed, but all he did was continue. I love when you sing in the shower terribly, dance around the house, and even when you run home when it's steak night with a goofy smile on your face ... and even when you're drunk and give lap dances, he said before I stopped him by covering his mouth with my hand. If I was red before, I was probably purple by now. I didn't think anyone knew about all those embarrassing things. I even made sure the house was empty. The new moon is right around the corner, I stuttered, trying to change the subject, and I immediately sensed his arousal. Yeah. He muttered, embarrassed, making me laugh. Now I wasn't the only one embarrassed. It was his turn. It'll be here before we know it. I can't wait to mate with you again. Especially after everything that's happened ... I just want you to fuck me so hard that I forget about everything I told him before I looked away from his chest and up at his green eyes. They were filled with love and lust, a very good combination but very bad right now. You know we can't have sex here, I said lowly, my voice filled with desire and need. I know, but it's taking everything in me to not pounce on you right now, broken leg or not, he said, and I blushed. We can't go any further than just kissing, I told him before I stared at his parted lips. He nodded before leaning into me and tilting his head to the side. He bit the bottom of my lip lightly before capturing my lips with his own. His soft lips brushed against mine carefully and delicately. He kissed me exactly how I wanted him to. A good hot and moist kiss always made my insides tingle, and he knew that. The kiss was delicious and electric. I uncontrollably leaned in to the kiss and moaned. It was hard reminding myself that we couldn't do any more than this, but I needed to feel his lips against mine, to feel his breath, his warmth. He was breathing right into my nose every time he exhaled, and it made everything more sensual. After a few minutes of just kissing, I pulled away slowly. My lips were definitely sore now, but it was worth it. The taste of his tongue lingered and my lips hurt, but I loved it. We talked for a few more minutes after that, but then I looked at the time on the wall and decided it was better to get back to my room. Get better soon, I said before leaving him alone in his room. I knew he didn't show me his vulnerability and how hurt he was once he saw me to protect me and to help me, but deep down I wanted him to open up to me and cry on my shoulder. I headed back to my room quickly but stopped once I turned the corner. Ah shit, I said loudly, causing Liam to look over with worry in his eyes. Both alphas were outside my room with Caleb and Cornelius, and they didn't look too happy to see me outside of my room. Chapter 20. Kyle's POV. Kyle isn't here right now. You're having a dream. Yeah, a dream, I said loudly before backing up slowly. We're not stupid, you idiot, Cornelius muttered with a frown on his face, and Caleb looked like he was holding in a laugh besides him. Get over here now, Trevor said while glaring at me. I sighed and groaned that my dream plan didn't work before walking over to them. We came to check on your condition, but you seem back to normal already, Skylar said, while smiling, but he was clearly mad at me too. They walked into my room and I followed in behind them with Liam glued to my side. If you're going to be upset with anyone, alphas, please be upset with me. If anything, as his mate I should have stopped him, but I couldn't bring myself to stop someone from seeing their mates, especially knowing how much my brothers wanted to see him. Liam said seriously as I sat him into my hospital bed next to me. Across from us, Trevor and Skylar were obviously having a mental conversation as their glares on me lightened up. Caleb and Cornelius were sitting in 2 chairs next to my bed, and Caleb still looked like he didn't want to even breathe the same air as his mate. We understand, but an alpha's order's absolute, and you know that, Kyle. How can you be one of our 2 trusted pack betas if you can't even follow orders? I'll be punishing you myself later, but for now you have an assignment. Trevor told me while I looked at him. My wolf whimpered, knowing that we disappointed our alpha, but for some reason, I didn't regret what I did. I needed to see them no matter what, so I did. I needed to see for myself that they were alive, and I needed to see how their injuries were. You're not going to fire me? I went against your orders, and instead of punishing me right here and now, you're giving me an assignment, I asked, confused. If it was really important, they could make the second beta, Wayne, do it. Wayne was Skylar's beta before the merge, so I'm sure he's just as qualified as me to do whatever job this is. Oh, trust me, it's taking everything in me to control my wolf and not beat your ass as your friend and alpha right now, Trevor said honestly, and I stiffened besides Liam. This assignment is something only you can do, not Wayne. Plus Wayne is busy with other things right now, Skylar said, causing me to nod. I didn't understand, but I guess I don't have a choice in the matter anyways. I'm already in trouble, so telling them no won't do me any good. What is the assignment? Liam asked while I leaned my head into his shoulder. Whatever it was, I just hoped it didn't take up too much time. I wanted to be near Seth and James while they recovered, and with the new moon coming up, I needed to be by all of them. We need Kyle to escort Caleb to Cornelius's homeland. He's heading back home with his pride, so I want Caleb to stay there for a month to see if he really wants to go through with his rejection and come home, or stay there and accept his mate, Trevor said as he crossed his arms and looked at me sternly. There was no room for argument, and I bit down on my bottom lip to stop myself from protesting. Can we at least go with him? You didn't think I'd just let my mate go overseas with a lion that tried to kill him, did you? I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid. There's also going to be other lions and shifters out there. The new moon is coming up, so who's to say they won't take advantage of him? Liam said loudly, and I grabbed his arm. If he was going to disrespect them, then we'd both end up getting punished. We planned on letting all 3 of your mates tag along after they're all healed, of course, but since they're still healing, you'll have time for your punishment before they leave in a few weeks, Skylar muttered before he and Trevor left the room. I let out a deep breath and Liam rubbed my back while glaring at Cornelius. You're lucky this was for Caleb. If it was up to me, I'd just let him reject you now, Liam spat at Cornelius, but all he did in return was smirk. You're just a hunter, you talk big words for someone who can't even fight, Cornelius said, and I held on to Liam to stop him from jumping at him. Why are you always like this? Caleb said to Cornelius before he stood up and walked off, Cornelius apologizing to him and following behind him like a kid. Don't let him get to you. We all know he's an asshole. I don't see what his pride of girls even see in him sometimes, but deep down he's a good person, I told Liam before kissing his cheek to calm him down. I don't know about that. He just loves to take any opportunity to get under my skin. How can we let Caleb become that guy's mate? He asked upset, and I rubbed his arm slowly, still trying to stop him from being so upset. Well, it's Caleb's choice as to if he wants to accept him as his mate or not. Not ours or anyone else's, I said before kissing the tip of his nose. After a while, he smiled calmly and kissed my forehead. I laid with him in my bed and yawned as we both stared up at the high ceiling above us. It was already pretty late and I felt sleep starting to want to take over my body. I snuggled into his side and closed my eyes slowly as he wrapped his arms around me. I didn't want to think about the hundreds of possibilities that might happen after we leave the pack territory to head to wherever the hell Cornelius is even from, or what punishment I was going to get soon. Right now, I just wanted to sleep in my mate's arms. Chapter 21. Kyle's POV. A. Today marks the first day of my punishment. It was a 3-day-long punishment that Trevor thought of himself, and I wasn't allowed to go against it or I'd make it worse. I had no idea what it was, but I knew it was going to be bad. Even though we've been friends since our childhood, he wasn't scolding me as my friend, but as my alpha. Good morning, Alpha, I said, depressed as I held my head down in front of him. He usually called for me in the morning, but today was clearly different due to reasons. Tonight's the night of the full moon. As heartbreaking as it is, I want you to stay the night in the prison we have in the cellar, he said sternly, and I just bit my bottom lip to stop myself from protesting. He knows how important tonight is for mated couples and our wolves in general, but I'm supposed to just stay in the cellar the entire time. You're not allowed to see any of your mates, leave the cell you're put in, or even try to weasel your way out of this. Do I make myself clear? He asked me in his alpha voice, so I nodded my head and kept looking down at the floor. Yes, Alpha, I said sadly, and I didn't even have to see his face to know how disappointed he was at me. Was his punishment a little harsh? Oh, totally, but it was better than him lowering my rank or even kicking me out of the pack entirely. Shit, he wants us to go a whole new moon away from our mates. We're going to be jerking off in some dirty prison cell while everyone else is having fun, my wolf yelled mentally, and I just sighed. Is that all for today's punishment, Alpha? I asked him after finally looking up from the floor. Yes, tomorrow as a punishment, you're going to let the Omegas get a break and clean the entire main house. Then the day after that, you're in charge of helping the pack elders with their ... problem, he said before crossing his arms in front of his chest. Wait, you don't mean, I said before I started to imagine the horror he was about to put me through. Yup, you're going to be rubbing all those elder feet and making sure there's nothing they need, he said before laughing loudly. So that was the punishment he gave me as his friend, rubbing old people feet for hours. And they're not even like cute little old people feet. They're always walking around shoeless, so their feet are all dirty and ugh. Why, yes, Alpha, I stuttered, just thinking about how many elders we even had in the pack. Good, you're dismissed now. The only one you speak to your punishment about is either your mates or me, he said sternly, and I almost laughed, which caused him to arch his eyebrow confused. Oh, I was just thinking of sharing the detail of my cruel punishment to our Luna, I said before he glared at me. But I'm not. You told me not to tell anyone else. Don't punish me again, I said before running out of his office. I knew his mate would definitely use his power as Luna to question me, so before he even got the chance to see me, I ran out of the main pack house and headed straight to my house. I still had 2 injured mates, my sweet Seth and adorable James, but now they're at home and just bedridden. It put me more at ease to have them in their beds at home with a nurse to come check on them every day than to be worried sick about how they were doing in the hospital every night. Hey baby, what's the rush? Liam asked me as he randomly appeared next to me and joined me in my run towards the house. I have some news about the punishment I received for today, I said nervously while smiling widely as we continued to run. Hopefully it isn't something too bad. Tonight's an important night for us, especially since you finally started to let us even touch you sexually, he said loudly, so I nudged his side embarrassed while we ran. About that, I said, and he looked at me confused. Tonight's going to be a really long night. Chapter 22. Kyle's POV. What the fuck do you mean? Liam shouted loudly as I tried hiding behind the couch James was laying on. James was on one of the couches in our living room while Seth was on the other. They were supposed to stay in their bedrooms like the doctors ordered, but they said they'd rather just stay in the living room together, and right now I was breaking the news about my punishment to all of them. He's the Alpha and I can't just not do the punishment, I mumbled while playing with my hands as I felt their heated stares on me. They weren't mad at me for getting punished. No, they were more mad at the situation. They finally got the okay to mate with me during a full moon after all this time, and now they'll have to wait until next month. Maybe it was just meant to be. It's not like we could have done much injured like this anyhow, James said before looking sadly at his injuries. But still, Liam shouted after he began to pace around the living room. Still nothing. Just drop it, Seth sighed out, which was a little surprising. Drop it, Seth. Out of all the punishments he's given out, none have been this harsh. Who does he think he is? Alpha or not, he has no right to take such a precious time away from mates, Liam ranted as he continued to pace around. I slowly began to shrink behind the couch while they continued to argue with each other. Watch your mouth, Liam, he's still our Alpha at the end of the day. Bad-mouthing him isn't going to change our situation. I'll just make it worse, James reasoned, causing me to peek over the couch. Well, I'm sorry for refusing to spend another full moon just jerking off against some random-ass tree in the forest while all the other mates are increasing their bonds, Liam shouted, which just made James growl at him. What a lucky tree, my wolf said while I turned super red, but now was so not the time to be thinking sexually. My wolf then suddenly made me picture them panting heavily against said tree, but again, as hot as it was, now wasn't the time. I shooed away my perverted imagination bubble, which caused their eyes to land on me. Sometimes I forget other people can't really see what's going on inside my brain. It's just one more month, plus I did promise that we'd all bond separately once James and Seth heal. Their injuries are slowly but surely getting better, and the doctors said they should be okay by next week, meaning we have time to have some fun before we embark on our journey for Caleb. I said, trying to brighten the mood, but it had the opposite effect. I still don't see why you have to be the one to accompany them, James said, and his brothers agreed with him. At least we'll all be going, I said happily, but they weren't budging. If Caleb doesn't want to be his mate, What's the point of making him go? He didn't seem to want to go any more than we do, Seth said while I came out from my hiding spot. Even if he changes his mind, they're just too different species-wise. I've never heard of a wolf surviving without a pack, especially in that type of terrain. Mates or not, he's going to have problems dealing with the other beasts out there. James said, and I couldn't stop myself from starting to agree. Caleb was still a wolf despite everything that's been happening, and an omega runt at that. He's been struggling physically for years. How is he supposed to deal with the animals that live out there? He's an easy target. All it would take is for them to take their eyes off of him for 1 second. But I still believe that deep down he likes finally finding his mate. We all crave for that moment, so it's hard to believe that Caleb wants nothing to do with his mate. I should start heading towards the prison cellar, I said before leaving the house. I didn't want to see their expressions or listen to them argue anymore, so I left. I know this punishment wasn't fair to them, but I'm going to make sure to make it up to them. It's not their fault I broke the rules. Having an orgy isn't an apology, my wolf said sternly, causing me to almost trip on my way to the pack house. Why do you always think about sex? Why can't you just think about food like other wolves? I asked as I ran. I could already feel the effects of the moon starting to change my body, so I needed to get into that prison quickly. Food? Why would I think about food when I can think about our sexy mates? My wolf said, as if it was the weirdest thing I've ever asked. And trust me, I've said some questionable things in my life. After a while of arguing with my wolf about food and sex, I arrived at the pack house. Gavin was waiting for me with a frown on his face and his hands on his hips before he led me down to the cellar's prison. I'll bring you something to eat before nightfall, honey, but you better not try any funny business. I know you well enough, so I'm sure you're going to start planning something tonight, Gavin said, and I sighed before he locked me in. Tonight was going to be a long night. Chapter 23. And another quick update, cause I love rushing 3. Kyle's POV. I was actually thankful for being held in the prison cellar despite everything. Sure, I'd rather not be in here at all, but at least I couldn't see the moon from here. I was so far below ground that not even a glimpse of the outside world got in, not that it mattered. All I'd see is dirt if we had windows down here. It was just strange to be down here. I've brought countless rogues and guys down here before, but now I'm the one behind bars. No one else was down here yet. Usually when the full moon comes around, people act differently. Sure, there's arousal and lust just hovering above everyone that's hit puberty, but with how strong the moonlight is, sometimes people act savagely without thinking. As sad as it may be, lots of younger male members fall victim to omega and female pheromones, regardless of if they just finished having their heats or going in heat, so we lock them down here. I just hoped we didn't get anyone down here tonight. Just because I couldn't see the moonlight didn't mean tonight didn't affect me. If that were the case, we'd all just stay underground to avoid it every month, or so. I sighed, as I began to feel myself getting flustered. My dirty mind went back into the gutter, even though that was the route I was trying my hardest to avoid right now. I still can't believe you'd choose anything over food, I told my wolf before I plopped down onto the cold cement floor. There weren't any beds in our cells, probably cause people don't spend days in them, so all I had in this cell was a tiny toilet in the corner and just a few feet to move around comfortably. But even though we try our best to keep up with them and clean them, it always has a lingering stench in here. I couldn't even put it into words. It wasn't revolting or too bad, but it was just noticeable that you've been in here. Okay, but what if our mates were naked with food on them? My wolf asked devilishly, not helping my already flustered face get back to normal. Then I pictured them all nude with my favorite sweets sliding down their chests and abs. I didn't have much of a sweet tooth. I mean, who am I kidding? I had a huge sweet tooth. I just loved food. I liked sweet things, bitter things, just about anything I could get my hands on and into my mouth. I swallowed a lump that formed in my throat and fanned myself at the thought. Liam with chocolate all over him sounded really good right now. Or even Seth with cliché whipped cream and strawberries. Or even James with sweet honey. Okay, wow, that got really weird, I said to myself out loud before resting my head against the cold wall behind me. Nothing's weird about fantasizing about our mates. I mean, how can you not? 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐬 commented again, and I began to start panting lightly. I was starting to feel the effects more, and I slowly began to let out little whimpers as my self-control began to fade. I didn't like being like this. Being a hot, whimpering mess on the cold cellar floor didn't suit me at all. I was starting to get horny, which was uncomfortable in this situation. Like, how embarrassing would it be if someone came down here to check on me and I was just coming all over my cell? If it was one of our mates coming down those stairs, that would be a different story, 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐬 commented again. I wasn't shocked by how thirsty he's been being for them. For a wolf, tonight's an important night, but at the end of the day he's still supposed to be a good influence on me. If anything, 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐬 was probably looking forward to mating with them under the moon more than they were, which is a lot. I tuned him out because the more he spoke, the more it was starting to get to me. I don't want to anger the alphas more than I already have, so breaking out of here to have steamy sex is out of the question. I just wanted to stay put and behave once in my life. I tried distracting my mind with how their injuries were doing right now, but then I ended up thinking about their bodies again. It seemed like no matter what I did, lust just kept clouding my mind. I snaked my right hand down my pants and under my briefs. My back arched slightly as I felt how hot my dick was. I was practically leaking by just thinking of them, and my dick was steamy hot. Please don't jerk off in this gross cellar. Please don't jerk off in this gross cellar, I thought to myself, but I couldn't stop my hand from starting to stroke myself to ease the pain. I moaned loudly and slammed my head unintentionally against the wall as the pleasure erupted through me. Usually during a full moon I'd just fantasize about sleeping with them, but this time, now that I have, I just keep thinking about being held by each of them over and over again and again. Each of them were unique in their own way, especially in bed. Despite being close triplets, they each fucked differently. I know that may sound super obvious, but it was a real shocker to me. Liam was impatient but passionate, Seth was shockingly more talkative and used dirty talk, and James was just the right mix of gentle and rough. The moon goddess was sure looking out for me because she knew exactly the right stuff I liked in the bedroom. I shuddered as I felt my slick starting to leak out of my ass and blushed at how embarrassing it is. A beta should not be producing slick. I know I kind of have to with how big their dicks are, but this is ridiculous. God, why is it just so wet? I whined while changing my position against the wall. I pressed my forehead against the cold wall and got on all fours. Maybe not facing the stairway was a bad decision, but as long as I could get off once before anyone came, I really don't care. I panted a little bit more and whimpered as I pulled my pants and briefs completely off to get quick access to my ass. Fingering myself didn't feel as good as it was when they touched me. I knew I probably wouldn't even be able to make this heat go away if I got myself to come once, but anything was better than the pain of holding back. I groaned but then froze when I started to hear footsteps start to come down the stairway.